Welcome back, everyone. Ready to dive into another wild story from the history of, well, questionable financial decisions.
Always ready to unpack some of history's greatest hits when it comes to schemes and scams. And boy, oh boy, this one's a classic.
I think most people think they know the basics of a Ponzi scheme, but today we're going deeper into the OG Ponzi scheme, the one that gave the whole thing its name.
Charles Ponzi, quite a character.
And we've got some really interesting primary sources for this one. We're going to be looking at Ponzi's own autobiography, written after everything came crashing down.
Which I'm sure is completely unbiased.
Oh, absolutely. But that's what makes it so fascinating, right? We're going to hear his version of events alongside accounts from the time to get a more complete picture.
You know what I find particularly interesting about Ponzi's story?
What's that?
It's like his whole life was leading up to this one grand scheme. You see hints of the mastermind he'd become even in his early days.
Okay, so let's rewind the clock back to the beginning. Ponzi was born in Lugo, Italy in 1882. Now, he wasn't exactly born into poverty, but his family's finances had taken a bit of a hit.
But even as a young man, this desire for wealth, it just consumed him. He saw America as the land of opportunity, the place where he could make his fortune. So he set sail, full of ambition, and arrives in the U.S. in 1903 with, get this, $2.50 to his name.
$2.50, that's it.
That's the story. Of course, he famously claimed to have $1 million in hopes.
Ah, there's the Ponzi we know, always with the grand claims. But those hopes didn't exactly translate into, shall we say, honest work.
Not quite. He bounced around from one odd job to another, always chasing that quick buck. I think he even had a stint as a dishwasher at one point.
Let me guess, it didn't end well.
Not exactly. He was fired for theft.
Sensing a pattern here, it seems like this willingness to bend the rules, even break them, was there from the very beginning.
It's almost like he was testing the boundaries, seeing what he could get away with, and this is crucial to understanding Ponzi's mindset.
So then he heads up north to Montreal, right? Looking for a fresh start, maybe.
Maybe. He ends up working at Banco Zarossi. Now, this bank was offering an incredibly high interest rate at the time, 6%.
6%. That's double what most banks were offering. Something's fishy, right?
Oh, absolutely. Banco Zarossi, they weren't actually turning a profit. They were using money from new deposits to pay interest to their earlier investors.
So classic robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Precisely. And this is where Ponzi gets his first taste of the scheme that will later make him infamous. It's like a front row seat to a financial train wreck.
He's seeing firsthand how this kind of manipulation works, the power it holds over people desperate for a good return.
It's almost like he's being mentored in the art of the con, even if unintentionally. But his time in Montreal doesn't end well either. He gets caught forging a check and ends up serving time in prison.
Oh, wow. So this is before he even comes up with the Ponzi scheme.
Yep. And you know what's amazing? Instead of trying to hide this part of his past, he actually spins it to his advantage. He writes to his mother, claiming he's working as a special assistant to the warden.
A special assistant. Even behind bars, he can't resist a good con.
It's in his blood. This need to control the narrative, to present himself in a certain light.
So after he's released, he ends up in Boston, still chasing that elusive fortune. And that's when he stumbles upon what seems like the perfect plan, a scheme involving these things called international reply coupons, or IRCs.
Oh yes, the IRCs. They were basically vouchers you could buy in one country and exchange them for postage stamps in another.
Okay. And how does that translate into a money-making scheme?
Well, because of the economic turmoil after World War I, these coupons had different values in different countries. Ponzi claimed he could exploit these price differences to make huge profits for his investors.
So there's a tiny grain of truth there, right? This idea of buying low and selling high in different markets, it's called arbitrage, isn't it?
It is. But the scale at which Ponzi was operating, the sheer volume of IRCs he'd need to make this work, impossible.
So right from the start, even if the idea had some theoretical basis, it was doomed to fail. It wasn't about arbitrage for Ponzi. It was about something much darker.
He was a master manipulator, preying on people's greed and desperation.
He sets up his own company, the Securities Exchange Company, and starts making these crazy promises. Double your money in 90 days. Who wouldn't be tempted by that?
And the craziest part, it worked, at least at first. Early investors actually got paid, fueling this frenzy of excitement. Word spread like wildfire, and soon Ponzi was raking in almost $1 million a day.
$1 million a day.
Think about that. This is 1920. That kind of money was unheard of.
It was like a runaway train. He must have known it couldn't last.
Oh, he knew. He had to. But by then, it was about more than just the money for Ponzi.
So if it wasn't just about the money, then what was driving him? What was the end game?
It's a question that's fascinated historians for decades. Was it ego, power, or was it maybe some sort of twisted belief in his own invincibility?
I mean, he had to have known it was all going to fall apart at some point, right?
Yeah.
The math just doesn't work with a Ponzi scheme.
Well, he knew. He knew. But there were cracks in the facade even before the whole thing imploded. The Boston Post caught wind of what Ponzi was doing and started investigating. They brought in this financial journalist, Clarence Barron, to really dig into the scheme.
And what did Barron find? Some kind of super complex accounting trick that Ponzi was using to fool everyone.
Nope. It was way simpler than that. Barron realized that Ponzi himself wasn't investing in his own company.
Yeah, if those returns were as amazing as he claimed, you'd think he'd be putting his own money in there.
Right. It's like that old saying, if it sounds too good to be true.
It probably is.
Yeah.
Yeah, a big red flag there. But Barron didn't stop there. He did some, I guess you could call it back-of-the-envelope calculations, and realized that to cover all the investments Ponzi had taken, there would need to be something like 160 million international reply coupons in circulation.
160 million. The actual number in existence at the time was closer to 27,000.
Wow. Talk about your house of cards. And people still believed him.
That's the power of Ponzi, right? This charisma, this almost hypnotic ability to convince people that they were on the verge of striking it rich.
He was selling a dream, a fantasy.
And people wanted to believe it. They were so desperate for a better life, for financial security, that they overlooked all the warning signs.
But you can't outrun reality forever.
Nope. The Boston Post articles started raising questions and concerns. Investors got nervous, and then came the panic.
The run on the bank.
Exactly. People rushing to withdraw their money before it all disappeared. Imagine the chaos, the desperation.
People must have been devastated. I mean, they put their trust, their life savings into this man's hands.
It was a financial and emotional bloodbath. Families were ruined, dreams shattered. Ponzi's scheme had real-world consequences, far-reaching and incredibly painful.
So what happened to Ponzi? Did he face justice for all this?
He did. Eventually. Federal authorities charged him with mail fraud. He first pleaded not guilty, but later changed his plea to guilty on a single count.
Just one count for all that.
Well, there were also state charges of larceny. Remember, Ponzi was pretty clever about how he structured things. It wasn't always easy to pin down exactly what laws he was breaking.
So did he get away with it then?
Not exactly. The state charges didn't just disappear because of the federal plea deal.
Ah, so he thought he was in the clear, but...
Nope. He actually argued that going back to court for the state charges was double jeopardy.
Did that work?
Took it all the way to the Supreme Court, and they said, nope, you're still on the hook for those state charges.
This guy, always pushing the limits.
Right. And this time, Ponzi decided to represent himself in court.
He did. Wow.
And get this, he was actually acquitted on the first 10 counts of larceny.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Acquitted. After admitting to running a giant Ponzi scheme.
The man was a master manipulator, even in a courtroom. He was smooth, charming, convincing. He played the jury like a fiddle.
Unbelievable.
But his luck ran out eventually. He was convicted on other larceny charges and sentenced to more time in prison, 7 to 9 years to be exact.
Okay, so finally, some real consequences for his actions. You'd think that'd be the end of the story, right?
You'd think so. But nope, that wasn't the end of Charles Ponzi's story. After his sentence, he was deported back to Italy. But even then, he couldn't resist the urge to scheme. It was like it was in his DNA.
So he just picks up right where he left off, cooking up new scams in a new country.
Pretty much. He even went to Brazil at one point, always searching for that next big score. But none of his later schemes reached the same scale or notoriety as the original Ponzi scheme.
I guess you could say that was his one-hit wonder, huh? Albeit a hit that left a trail of financial and emotional wreckage in its wake.
A perfect way to put it. Ponzi's story is tragic, fascinating, and ultimately a cautionary tale about the dangers of greed and the allure of easy money.
It's a reminder that human nature doesn't really change all that much, even over the course of a century.
Right. Ponzi might be long gone, but his name, his legacy, it still resonates today.
So Ponzi gets deported back to Italy, schemes a bit more in Europe and even Brazil, but never again on the scale of that original scheme. The name Ponzi, though, That's forever linked to this specific type of con.
Oh, yeah. Ponzi scheme. It's become part of the language, right? Like a warning label we all know, even if we don't fully understand the mechanics.
And I think that's what makes this story so important to revisit, even 100 years later. It's not just about one guy and his crazy scheme. It's about understanding the psychology behind it.
Absolutely. Ponzi tapped into something very primal, very human. That desire for easy money, the belief that we can somehow outsmart the system and get rich quick.
And the tragedy, of course, is that there were real victims, people who lost everything because they believed Ponzi's promises.
Thousands of them. It's estimated that Ponzi took in something like $15 million from investors in 1920s money. Imagine what that translates to today.
Hard to even fathom. Can any of those investors ever get their money back?
Some did, but only a fraction. Most were wiped out completely. They lost their life savings, their homes, their businesses. The ripple effects were devastating.
It's a sobering reminder that these scams aren't just victimless crimes, they leave real people hurting in their wake.
And it's not just about the financial losses, right? It's about the erosion of trust. When something like this happens, it makes people question everything. It makes them afraid to invest, afraid to trust anyone with their money.
So how do we protect ourselves from falling for something like this? What are the warning signs to look out for?
Well, the most obvious one is the promise of unusually high returns with little or no risk. Remember, there's no such thing as a free lunch. If an investment opportunity sounds too good to be true.
It probably is. Yeah, I think we've all heard that one before.
But it's true. And don't be afraid to ask questions. Lots of questions. Do your due diligence. If someone is pressuring you to invest without giving you all the information, that's a huge red flag.
Trust your gut too. If something feels off, it probably is.
Exactly. And remember, there are resources out there to help you. If you're ever unsure about an investment opportunity, talk to a financial advisor you trust or check with your local consumer protection agency.
Ponzi might have been a master manipulator, but we can learn from his mistakes. We can be smarter, more cautious, and protect ourselves from falling into the same traps.
Absolutely. And by understanding how these schemes work, we can help protect others as well. Spread the word, share the knowledge. Let's make sure that Ponzi's legacy isn't one of endless victims, but one of awareness and prevention.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us as we explore the twisted world of Charles Ponzi and the scheme that bears his name. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe out there.